You know, Gabrielle, you were talking about y- yesterday. We were talking about how you were able to teach uh, hundreds of Kentucky school children bluegrass music and actually get them instruments and get them involved in the process.
Mhm.
And can you tell us a little bit more about how you know it's? I think of Kevin Costner's Field of Dreams or something. It's like he had the dream about the baseball and he built the thing, and then the people came, and that's kind of like what you've done, except it's a miracle to be able to pull off something like this, much less something that grows like an oak tree and gets stronger and better every year under your guidance.
When I was hired by the board of directors of the Bluegrass Museum to put on a festival and to try to make the museum uh, a really viable tourist industry for the city of Owensboro and also for the state of Kentucky and also for the genre worldwide. When I was hired by them, they the museum was drawing about 200 visitors a year, and so they weren't happy with those results, as you might imagine. And so I talked to my brother, who was superintendent of the Catholic diocese, which included Owensboro. So uh, he told me that basically in Owensboro, people did not care that much about bluegrass music, that they didn't consider themselves the home place of bluegrass, that was Ohio County, the county, one county down from Davis County. And so he said, I don't think you'll ever be able to get much going here because we consider ourselves a blues community, and Everly Brothers and other types of music, but not bluegrass. But the board, of course, wanted um, that to change, and so I said, well, we have to be in this for the long haul in order to overcome that type of a problem. That's basic, you know. So the way to do that is through education. You start with the preschoolers and you go all the way up through the 8th grade, and you start teaching them the music. And the way to get them to love the music is to give them an hour out of class, which is, you have an all school assembly program, you bring in a really top notch national act, and you perform for the kids, and they're going to love it, especially if you can get their teachers to get up there and dance, and somebody gets to dance with the teacher, and the musicians interact with the kids. The very first year that we put on these all school assembly programs in every one of the grade schools and middle schools in Davis County. So there are many schools, and a national act per year, one per year. But it would take us 2 weeks to go through all those schools. The very first year, we would say, how many people have ever heard of Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass music? I think in one school we got one hand. That's how it was, total no knowledge. And by the time we'd done this 2 or 3 years, there were more hands that went up. And after 4 or 5 years, all the hands went up. And meanwhile, I got a grant from the Kentucky Arts Council and also from a couple called the Glazebrookes that moved in from California to come and be full-time volunteers at the museum. And they gave me a starting $8,000 gift with which I negotiated with a bunch of different instrument manufacturers until we finally were able to get enough instruments out of all that money to buy a set of, there was a violin, a banjo, a guitar, and a mandolin for every school in the county. And then we hired Randy Lanham, who was a wonderful music teacher and who is still doing this, by the way, in his many-th year. So he would go to the schools. Sometimes he had people with him. Sometimes it was just himself. And all the kids would have an instrument. And he would go to the schools for like 5 or 6 weeks, each school. So you're funding a lot of programs going on here. Buying the instruments, paying the instructor. And then we had the teachers come to the museum, and they could get educational credits, greater educational, continued education, whatever. They could get credits for studying bluegrass and being able to use the instruments that we had given them to teach their students how to play. Anyway, so that went on fairly well, and we had a lot of difficulties because the teachers said, I can't play this instrument, so how am I supposed to teach it? This is not, not what I went to school for. Okay, we heard a little bit about that, and so that didn't go over so well. And I said, well, what if we just get the students that want to play an instrument? We'll buy enough instruments, because I had a back door entry to where you could get a quality instrument for $100. So we bought enough instruments so that we could teach whoever wanted to learn, not just, everybody, but the ones who were turned on by those assembly programs and they wanted to learn how to play this music. And so they could come to the museums every other Saturday and get lessons, group lessons. And so we hired a number of different instructors for each instrument. And we had classes. The first time we offered this program, there were over 400 people showed up.
Wow.
And it's like, oh, do we have 500 instruments? Well, actually, yes, we do. So everyone had an instrument. And you could just see the confidence level building. I mean, you tell these kids, look, yeah, the first day it's going to sound bad, but this is the worst you're ever going to sound. Because the next time you're going to sound a little bit better. And you just build on it.
Yeah, that reminds me, I didn't even mention the International Bluegrass Museum, that you're involved with the founding of the...
No, I'm not the founder of it. But I was the executive director for 14 years.
And during those 14 years, can you describe the evolution of the...
we started off with, a very dark museum with very few people in it. It was nice looking, but no one came. And there was no curator, and it was just myself and a secretary to start with. And there's a full staff now with everything you need to run a big, beautiful museum. We built a new museum, and it's fabulous.
In Owensboro, Kentucky.
Oh my God, you should go see.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, multi-million dollar jewel on the Ohio River with all these, fountains that go forever, and hotels and restaurants and convention centers, and everything was built around this as the jewel of the town.
Yeah, I mean, in a time when there's so much divisiveness, especially in rural America, where people are turned against each other, and there's urban and rural and white and black and religious and non-religious.
If you're playing music with somebody, you're not going to be wanting to kill them. You're going to want them to play their best because it makes you look good, and you're going to want to play your best because there they are. They're putting their best out there. So people who are playing music together are going to get along together for the most part. Now, you always hear about bands breaking up, and they do, and they will, okay, because you're at such a level, it's like a marriage. You're at such a level of intimacy, and it's not that you've chosen that person to be married to. So bands are going to break up.
Well, not just bands, but I'm talking about the whole.
But when there's music, and there's music in the air, and people are playing, they're happy. They're not warlike. They're not going to be, who did you vote for? They're like, oh my God, isn't this freaking fabulous? that's the difference right there.
And I mean, Kentucky, from some people's point of view, it's thought of as a backward state with poor people and horse farms and coal miners. And I read somewhere that the word Kentucky in the native language actually is translated as land of tomorrow. And it seems like everything that you've done has been about tomorrow, in a sense. I mean, where there was nothing, there's now the International Bluegrass Museum. And
Well, those little kids that came in for the lessons on Saturdays, they would be performers at the festival that I founded called ROMP, River of Music Party, but ROMP. And
that's a big festival. I mean,
Oh, yes,
how many
huge.
people are there every year?
25,000.
It's like Woodstock.
Anyway, so
Kentucky.
we'd have one entire stage full. I mean, like rows of people all the way across, after another, after another, after another. And so that's the Kentucky Bluegrass All-Stars. Those are all the kids that are studying in both the schools and at the museum. They come in and they, on Saturdays, it's so cute. The little boys have on their little top hats and their vests and their nice shirts under there, and they've got that fiddle slung over their back, and they come strutting in there, and so cute. And they open their cases up and they tune them up. Those same people, fast forward 10 years, they got their violin on their back. They're headed for college.
Wow.
They get on the plane, they've got their violin. Oh, don't touch that. That's my everything right there. And then they get to college and they tell all their friends about this fabulous music festival. You got to come to ROMP. Oh my God, you won't believe how incredible.
Yeah.
And so what we did, to grow that factor was to have a very young performance core of people. So if you were in a college music program and you played an instrument, you could come to ROMP for free, provided you brought your instrument and you jammed.
Oh, how cool.
So you create this milieu of everyone having an instrument, everyone playing all over the place, all over the campgrounds, where they're eating their food, there were like arts and crafts, there's bands set up in there, and then there's backstage, there's just a whole plethora of people playing instruments all the time. And then these young performers would be able to study, not study, but you know what I'm saying, they'd have workshops and all this. They'd be able to learn from the masters that were on the stage. And then we got as many young masters as we possibly could to show the kids in the schools, look, this could be you. This, in a very short period of time, you play that instrument, day one's going to sound bad. Day 23, you're going to sound pretty good. You're going to be excited. And then you can become a professional. And there are many bands that have come out of ROMP and out of Owensboro. And the community has seen what it's done for the children, and they have embraced it big time. So there's no problem with donations or anything else. It's well funded, it's well supported. Owensboro is an incredible town for that. It is so progressive.
Really?
Yes. I'm not talking politically. I'm talking socially and culturally progressive.
It's beautiful.
It is a beautiful, beautiful city. And man, I just thank my lucky stars I got to be there for as long as I did, because it was a wonderful, wonderful time for me.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember the last ROMP festival I attended. Steve Martin was performing, and the president of Yale University was addressing the mob, and there were bluegrass acts from Japan and Korea, I think, and all over the world.
Oh yeah.
I just couldn't. It's mind-boggling that so much is happening in Owensboro, Kentucky.
Do you know what your direct connection is to that, Dr. Patrick Moore.
To ROMP.
To ROMP, to the Master Musicians Festival.
Well, you
and to
are.
and to the not hundreds but thousands of musicians that these events have produced, and the bluegrass in the schools is still producing. You know what your direct connection is to that? So let me remind
tell
you.
me.
When I was 36 years old, I owned a house. It was a wood house, a clapboard siding, and it was a really cool house. And I didn't think anybody could paint it as well as I would. I was going to be able to paint the trim and all that, you know. And so I was this much, maybe this much to go. I was on a ladder at the roof line, second story roof line. And I had this much to go to finish the second coat. And stupid me. Okay, to keep the ladder from scratching the house, I tied rags around the top of it. Well, that part was smart. But then, right where this was a strip about that big that had paint dust and stuff on it. And I wanted to clean that off before I painted it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Oh, I didn't set the ladder right. I don't dare go up and down it again. What shall I do? Oh, I've got a rag right here. And so I jerked one of those rags off of it so that I could dust it. Oh my God, how stupid can a person be? But anyway, down goes the ladder, and my feet get caught in the place where it's doubled up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I take the weight of the ladder and the fall with both feet on the ground, and then I flip back, and it breaks both of my ankles, and one ankle had to be basically put back on. And it broke my leg and it screwed up my back. Anyway, so I was in traction for a long time. I had gotten really ticked off at Blue Cross Blue Shield for keeping me on the phone too long. I was just really sick and tired of that, okay? So I canceled my health insurance 1 month before this happened.
Oh, wow.
So I had no way to pay for the operation and the doctors and the anesthesiologist and, you know, the surgeon. I had no way to pay for anything. And so my aunt let me borrow a couple $1,000s, and so I got out of debt. And in order to pay her back, I had to figure out something I could do for a living, because I exhausted all of my savings paying for the hospital bill.
Wow.
I still had the doctors to pay. And so, you being a physician, you understood this problem, and you gave me a little mini synthesizer that I could use in my hospital bed with my feet in traction up there, you know, and in my living room. And you said, here, I will pay you, I forget how much you said, I don't know, a certain amount of money if you'll notate my songs for me. I think you were just trying to figure out a way to give me money, which is something you do. But anyway, I started notating your songs. Now, I was a violinist from early on, but I had never written a note, never. And so this was a whole new thing for me. And a friend of mine came in from Apple Shop in Eastern Kentucky, and she said, if you can notate that, why don't you write me a piece of music? She's a classical violinist, also Celtic, Nina Dreyer.
Uh-huh.
And so Nina said, why don't you write a piece of music for me and I'll pay you? I said, no, you don't have to pay me. I need something to do. So I wrote a piece of music called Sonata for Sisters for violin and piano.
Uh-huh.
And then I was invited to, I started writing more, you know,
Uh-huh.
chamber music. And I was invited to perform at Louisville for their Kentucky Composers event. And so from that, I started writing music much more seriously, and I got any number of grants from Kentucky Foundation for Women, especially Kentucky Arts Council, very helpful. But other people, and then I started getting commissions. And one of the things that happened with the Kentucky Arts Council was I got a 3-year grant called Community Arts Grant. So I was a composer in residence. And as such, part of the grant, things I promised to do with the grant was to help local children learn how to write their own music. So I had 29 schools I was working in, and this was all the way from preschool to senior in high school. And their music was so good that I thought, I have to find a way to showcase this. I can't just let this go. It was a wonderful, wonderful year of compositions by, myriad number of ages and everything. And so I had read in the New York Times about this artist who was a wonderful pianist. And when he was like a child prodigy, there was this ticker tape parade of him in New York City, and all the confetti and all this, and it was a fabulous artist. And then he was completely anonymous, in his 30s. Nobody knew anything about him. In his 40s, he was less than dead. He was submerged. But when he became 50, he reemerged as a master musician, and he was teaching the ones that were coming on what it was to be an incredible performer. So they used that term, master musician, in this article, that when he turned 50, that's what he considered himself. Well, I happen to be turning 50, so so I thought, well, I wasn't there yet, but I knew I was going to within the decade, So I thought, well, what if we had the masters take the songs of these kids and learn the song and then perform it on stage in a festival setting? So you'd have somebody like Doc Watson, and then there's, this whole group of kids with him that either they learned the song that somebody in their group wrote, or they've all learned it together, because there was a lot of, people working together to create songs.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so I convinced various people of master status to do that, to come to our festival and do their show, but then to do this thing to showcase the songs that had been written over the year. And it was an incredible success, just a fabulous success. And all those kids, you can't imagine the high that they were on. And of course that translates to their parents' pride, and their grandparents and their aunts and uncles came. And so we grew the whole festival that way. And it was at the same time when the International Bluegrass Music Association moved its festival out of Owensboro to Louisville. And that entire energy dropped out of Owensboro just like a black hole, just like one of these holes where the cars disappear, and you wonder,
like the Corvette Museum.
What happened here? Why did it leave us?
Yeah.
Of course, it moved to Louisville, and soon enough, it left Louisville too. Ooh, another big gaping hole. But back to Owensboro, it had the museum, and the museum went basically dark.
Mm-hmm. And
they remodeled it, and it still was dark. And so that's when I came onto that scene with a different approach, let's do this from the ground up.
Bring in the light.
Yeah, bring in the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're everything. Anybody who wants a long-standing program and something that goes on forever, it's not like you're going to be able to put it up this year,
Yeah.
You got to plan for the future. But that same bunch of kids that started off in preschool and went all the way up, they're still doing it, of course. That same bunch of kids now comes to romp with their little kids, right? And they're the ones that donate. They support the museum. They keep the history alive. They keep the music alive. It's a circle, and it self-generates,
The bluegrass circle of life.
Well, as any music. So
really.
The Master Musicians Festival is wildly eclectic.
Mm-hmm.
This has every kind of music going,
I remember going to a big classical music concert in Lexington that was sold out, and they were performing nothing but Gabrielle Mattingly's compositions, and it was a whole orchestra. It was fabulous, and I remember you mentioning, recently that you're writing or you're bringing music that you've written in the past back to life again. Can you tell us a little bit about your contemporary, or you might even play a little bit of your composition for us right now if you want.
Oh.
It's on your cell phone.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'll wait until there's an orchestra that performs it and it's not synthesized music.
But you're getting back into it again.
Yeah. I'll have a little more time now. I'm retired.
So you've retired from running the International Bluegrass Museum and the River Music Party and the Master Musicians Festival.
Yeah, and they're all still going in their very good hands.
And so you're finally going back and putting some of your own pieces.
Yeah.
And you're also writing a novel.
Yes.
A historical novel.
Yeah, that's all but finished, right?
Do you want to tell us anything about that?
It's a story about, it's primarily about my 4 grandparents and how they met. And how, because of the 4 of them, my parents came to be, and because of them, I came to be, and because of me, my daughter came to be. That whole lineage thing.
It's kind of a Kentucky story too, isn't it?
It's Kentucky and Georgia, right? My father's mother was from Georgia, so there's a lot that goes. And my grandfather, her husband, was living in Georgia. So there's a lot of Georgia, and there's more Kentucky because they did indeed move back to Kentucky, and so, but it's about music also. A lot of musicians in the family. It's also about religion, how the the Catholic faith so influenced their lives.
Mm-hmm. So, what's the name of the book?
The book is named for a line in one of my dad's poems. My dad was a fabulous poet.
He was.
Oh my goodness. And published also. There was a line in one of his poems. I should just find it and read it. You can pause. I got it.
Now, the name of the book that you're writing about our family it's from your dad.
Right. My dad wrote a poem called Amazing Innovation. In fact, that's the title of his book of poems from his lifetime. He was voted the poet laureate in Louisville, the Commonwealth Courier Journal, many years in a row.
Oh, wow.
But this is one that he wrote to Mom when she was planning to become a nun, and he was trying to convince her that no, that's not the will of God, Nora. You're going against the will of God and against the plan of creation. If you choose to become a nun, all of God's creation comes to naught because you're not following his will. and he knew that he would never be able to get this ring on her finger if he couldn't first convince her mother really wanted her to become a nun. And we're taught as Catholics that to become a nun or a priest is the highest level of achievement that you can hope to get. Of course, we're taught that by people that have chosen that path. But then when it's reinforced by your mother, who's had 14 children, you have to wonder. Well, Mom, you didn't necessarily do this, did you? But anyway, so I don't know if you want me to read the whole poem, but it's pretty funny when you consider the context of he's a young man trying to get some type of new thought into. Let me read the whole thing. It's pretty amazing. So, particles infinitesimal, even to the ultimate decimal, whirled within their orbs in eerie flight before God ever said, "Let there be light." Careening in galaxies uncharted, myriad bodies bounded heart. Maybe I should try this over. Particles infinitesimal, even to the ultimate decimal, whirled within their orbs in eerie flight before God ever said, "Let there be light." Careening in galaxies uncharted, myriad bodies harbored boundless might, each to do the task to it imparted, nor. All creation measures the devotion of each to its particular task of motion. Matter chants a saga of gyrations. Heat and light are varia of vibrations. Color is light in manifold refractions. Sound, ethereal reverberations. Force, the power of nuclear attractions. Their liaison tells a matchless story. Ever in obedience is glory. Ever in conformity, expression. Discord alone is retrogression. For providence cannot envisage strife. Harmony, the one divine obsession, permeates the mystery of life. Cell to cell in ecstasy united, chord to chord and urge to urge requited. Every form and phase of generation emulates the concert of creation. Love is the one compelling theme, forever seeking consummation, ever fashioning a newer dream. And this is the stanza from which the book title comes. Inceptions that were you and I in ages, dead beyond all retrospective sages. Far, I almost cried, far across the frost-white firmament, one clear call to each the other sent. Somewhere they met, I can't do this, Patrick, I'm just so weepy. Somewhere they met in thin white air and following divine intent, struck a chord of deathless music there. So the book is called To Each the Other Sent. One clear call to each the other sent. Shall not this resurgent harmony swell into eternal rhapsody? Dearest, if you love me not, creation weeps the amazing elevation. Tending to disrupt the primal plan, dissonance created consternation, ever while harmonious ages ran. Splendidly to you, my soul is singing. Loud in my heart, wild arias are ringing. Mute not the strings that play the minuet, nor still the hearts that throb to beauty yet. Lily, stifle not the rose of bliss blooming on thy parapet. Consecrate this moment with a kiss. So, with that poem, he convinced both my mother and her mother that it was indeed God's will that they be married. And he slipped a ring on her finger.
Amen. Amazing innovations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love your dad's poems. It reminds me of Gerard Manley Hopkins, the way it's like the consciousness of the wonder of life.
Oh yeah.
Being expressed there. And So this is really exciting. You're near the finish. You've nearly finished the book now.
I have finished. I'm just in a little, what they call fly specking right now.
I see.
It's done.
So you're turning over a whole new aspect of life, even.
When I was in my 20s, I did a lot of writing. I wrote several books. I didn't try to get any of them published because they had a little bit of raciness in them. Not racist. Trust me, racy, as in sexually racy, and I didn't want my parents to read it, so I never tried to get them published. I always thought, well, I'll wait till they're gone, and then I can do this. But by that time, I had a reputation, and I didn't necessarily want to soil it, so I just let that go. Anyway, but I did write for, I wrote for the Chicago Sun-Times newspaper. I was what they call a stringer, and did a lot of music writing then, and I wrote for High Fidelity magazine, and I did Playboy After Hours and interviews and stuff like that. So I did quite a bit of writing, and when you're writing notes, it's almost like words. If you're a writer, you can do both.
And that's what you're doing now?
Yeah, I'm doing both. So
How
now
exciting.
I'm doing both simultaneously, and that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I want to thank you so much for coming by and sharing a little bit of what's going on when you're
if I were to say anything to a female audience, I would say, my mother, in a time when it was kind of rare to get a high school education, and she graduated from college with a degree in math. But when I was in high school, she told me, be sure you take typing, because, why, Mom? Because if your husband ever dies, then you can get a job as a secretary and support yourself. Okay, thanks, Mom. But anyway, I did take typing, and it has helped with, writing a book. But it's what I would like to say to any women that are out there. Don't rely on anything but yourself. You're not lesser than anyone. You're not greater than anyone. You are just you. And there are no limits to what you can achieve. None, especially now. I never felt like I had to assert myself as an equal to a man, because I just assumed it naturally. And I never had any trouble along those lines whatsoever.
You've never had the male dominance of the music
The only
industry?
thing I would say, I know that income-wise, I had that, there was a problem along those lines. But, I owned my own business for many, we could get into that. That's a whole different era of my life where I, and a very interesting one, in my opinion, that I'm very proud of. And I had no male bosses whatsoever.
Interesting.
So that's when I actually made money.
Well, you made so many good times for so many people, and
they made them for me. All those people coming up and saying, this is the best thing I've ever been to, the most happiest I've ever been. This is fabulous. This is incredible. Imagine how that made me feel. What a gift. What a gift.
Yeah. You're a gift to us and to the state and to the
their
world.
gift to me,
Yeah.
it's mutual.
Well, thank you so much, Gabrielle, for everything you've done for me personally and our family
You got this whole thing started.
and everything. Right. And
You
in
know-
the most tangential way imaginable. That's
But it's,
some
no, it
unusual
was
thinking
critical. It's like, you know, the
Right.
headwaters
Right.
from which all the rest bubbles up. But let me tell you, I was at Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival in California, so named. But okay, bluegrassers back then, they wanted it to be strictly bluegrass, or they didn't want to support it. And it was hardcore. We used to call them bluegrass Nazis, right? But I had a friend in San Francisco named Warren Hellman, and he's no longer with us, but his legacy lives on big time in a festival called Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival, because he wanted to have Emmylou Harris and Hazel Dickens there every year, and the bluegrassers were saying, you can't call your festival Strictly Bluegrass Festival if you're having non-bluegrass women artists. And he said, okay, well, I'll just rename it. And he renamed it Hardly Strictly, which I thought was fabulous. Anyway, so his festival it was free and had fabulous acts, still does. And they would, you know, easily have 700, 800,000 people in Golden Gate Park listening to bluegrass music, right?
Uh-huh.
And one year I tried to go out many years, but one year I was out there, we were looking out across this mass, it was like an ocean of people, and he put his arm around my shoulder and he said, this is why I do this. Look at all these happy people. I was able to make all these people happy. And I'm like, dude, I get it. On my smaller scale, there's nothing. There's no bigger gift.
Well, thank you so much, Gabrielle. And we want to be looking forward to an update as to what happens next in your very exciting life, which we've only really touched on. We haven't mentioned the 50 countries you've been to in the last 3 years and what you've been doing there, but we'll save that for next time. So thank you so much.
Thank you.